Hello and welcome to podcast number 4 with the Sisters of Thunder, Kathy Baldock and Yvette Schneider. And we've decided this is Yvette month. So, because if you haven't listened to podcast number 1 talks about each of our own individual stories. And Yvette has had a life on the inside of the religious right and policy with Family Research Council, Concerned Women for America, Athletes in Action, and even in Exodus. So it's a very interesting, we hear a fair amount of people coming out of that sort of thinking, but we mostly hear about it from like the ex-gay movement. So before we move on to that, let's finish some more of, what work did you do when you were with Concerned Women for America?
Well, when I was with Concerned Women for America, it was basically an extension of Family Research Council. But honestly, I didn't do a whole lot because I was a new mother. And I had a crazy baby.
Mm-hmm. Which one of your crazy
required
babies?
A lot of attention. But I knew my whole purpose for consulting, they called me a consultant with Concerned Women for America, was, again, just having an established person who used to be gay.
Right. And you worked for Athletes in Action.
And I did Athletes in Action and Fellowship of Christian Athletes, also consulting for them because, as most people know, there are quite a few lesbians in women's sports.
You think? Right. Yeah.
So I spoke at some chaplains conferences where chaplains for the WNBA came. I wrote a booklet called, what was the name of it? But I wrote it for Athletes in Action and Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and it was called Bridging the Gap.
Nice.
Reaching lesbian identified women with the love of Christ.
And also, I've pointed this out in some places where we've done presentations and spoken together, that you also have a chapter in Alan Chambers' Leaving Homosexuality, too.
Yes, I do.
And I'd read that. Of course, I own that book. Of course,
Of course.
And when I realized who you were and I was hanging out with you, there was your chapter in there. And it's from that whole perspective of, we talked about at the end of last time being a true believer and never questioning what you were thinking and holding the scriptures or your interpretation of the scriptures really highly.
And I found the people at Athletes in Action and Fellowship of Christian Athletes were very respectful of lesbian athletes. Very respectful.
Now, some of your information is still out there. Like you had a person recently who remembered hearing you quite a while ago contact the old you.
Yes.
And how did that feel?
And I felt a little bit responsible for her.
Right.
And I told her that, and she said, "You were never anything but respectful to me. I never felt anything but honored by you." So that made me happy. Mm-hmm. But I knew that I was that way. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to be condemning or say, God doesn't love you, you're going to hell, nothing like that. So I was happy to hear that from her, but it also saddened me to see that she's still locked into that old thinking of, I have to remain celibate.
And so,
for my life.
How do you help with those people? We talked about this last week of, suggesting people find their own truth through this, because it's really hard when somebody is set, even a gay person, has that mindset of something is wrong with them and they're broken. And if they're young, if they're under 30, or if they've lived some cognitive years during the 80s and 90s and 2000s when the message has been pretty poisonous from both the church and the religious right, condemning her, even if you weren't. How do you suggest she move along?
A lot of the time it's coming from the people that I dealt with have come from Christian families. So even if they feel, look, my same-sex attractions will never go away. And this is one thing I want to clear up about female sexual fluidity. It does not mean that you don't have a same-sex attracted orientation, that you don't have a gay orientation just because you're a woman. Because these women that I have spoken with and talked to, they absolutely do. And they don't have attractions to men. And if they do, it's very small. Most of them just know, of these athletes that I've spoken with, that, okay, I'm never going to get married. I'm never going to be in a relationship. And this is what I have to do to please God and to not be disowned by my family. And their church life and their family life and their faith is so important to them that they're not going to risk it.
Right.
They don't want to risk it. And so I can understand where they're coming from. I'm going to be the last person that's going to say, leave your family, leave your church, leave it all behind. But what I do is I say, you have to see exactly what I did. You have to find out what your inner truth is. What is it that you truly believe, and what is it that other people are putting on you?
And that sometimes requires, well, from what I see in a lot of people's lives, it requires a crisis. Unfortunately, it does. For me, it was a crisis. For you, it was a crisis.
It was a crisis.
Because otherwise, you just go day to day. Life has enough stuff in it to worry about day to day, to not take on these extra burdens until some kind of crisis hits you, that this becomes something you must look at. And so I don't know very many people that have chosen to deal with this issue that haven't in some way come into crisis, whether it be for themselves or in relationship. So it's a hard thing to walk someone through. And I think in these times when someone is faced with that, we, as being fully affirming people, have to be very respectful of where someone is at, not calling them, as we talked about last week. They're not stupid. They're not ignorant. They're not bigoted. These are just words I just try to avoid, because my set of experiences is uniquely my set of experiences. And your set of experiences is unique to you. So to judge where someone else should be or what they should know, it's very difficult. But if we can keep having moderate, educated, open, civil, respectful conversations.
But I know these women respect me, so they're going to listen to what I have to say. Otherwise, they wouldn't be seeking me out.
Right.
So what I see as a crisis is whether for this woman who contacted me, whether it's one of her parents dying, whether it's something extreme happening at work,
or falling in love, and can't deny it.
This is the point that I'm getting to, and that is usually what pushes someone over when they say, this is not lust. I'm not just dying to have sex with this person. I am just in love with this person. I can't imagine being without her for the rest of my life.
Right.
And usually that's what pushes someone into crisis.
Right.
And relationship is important.
It is important.
That. I mean, how can we expect someone to just be celibate for their entire lives?
And we deal with that in webinar number 5 as well.
Right. Yes. When you're talking about the New Testament, homosexuality.
Right. So let's talk then. Let's fast forward out of Athletes in Action and CWA and Family Research Council. You had a time at Exodus. Can you tell us, is Exodus still around? I know the answer to this.
Well, I started working for Exodus in the summer of 2008. In the fall of 2008 is when I was doing work in California in favor of Proposition 8.
Yes.
Defining marriage as between a man and a woman in California.
This
is one of those when Kathy kicks me out of the car, makes me walk home. And then then I was working as the first director of women's ministry that they had ever had at Exodus. Exodus had never had a director of women's ministry.
Why would that be? It's such an oversight. Oh, I know, because
White
women don't
male hierarchy,
Right. Right.
patriarchy. Yeah,
Right.
never had been a director of women's ministry. So I came on as the director of women's ministry, and suddenly I'm getting all sorts of phone calls, and they're women who are ministry leaders in crisis. Talk about being in crisis.
Ministry
Most of them
leaders in
ministry-
ex-gay ministries.
In ex-gay ministries. Ministry leaders in ex-gay ministries who are having affairs with women. Women leaders having affairs
Very
with women.
secretly, very closeted, I would assume.
Very secretly, very closeted, very many of them.
Wow.
And as someone who didn't do anything like that, I was shocked. Well, I won't say I was shocked because I had seen this happen before with the men, so why wouldn't it happen with the women? But disappointed because, and this is what I found the most fascinating, was they still wanted to stay in ministry. They still wanted... And I remember talking to this one woman and saying, but you're having an affair with a woman. And even if you called it off, because at Exodus, if you had a fall like that, the fact that you even have a word for it and call it a fall, and that this is something that regularly happens and that you have to have some sort of system in place for when this happens, tells you how ineffective conversion therapy and ex-gay anything really was. But you couldn't be in ministry for 4 years. And this woman was arguing with me, and I said, what are you going to tell people? If you're having gay relationships yourself, but you're telling them that they don't need to, that they shouldn't, that they can't.
So would she go out on stage and...
Well, no, these are local ministries. So some of the ministries were more well known than others.
Did you ever see it from people that were higher up?
Yes, I did. And
Both
that's
male and
really
female.
all I can say about that.
Right.
Both male and female, that's all I can say. And yes, at all levels. At all levels.
So that's got to be disheartening when you know you're working for an organization that's telling other people that according to 1 Corinthians 6:9 through 10, and let's add on 11, because, and such were some of you. I mean, I've had that experience where I've sat in front of ex-gay leaders and they're claiming, as such was some of you, was their mandate to no longer be gay. And I hear from other friends who are ex-gay leaders who are still watching people within that movement, that are still writing books within that movement, and they know that those people, typically men, are declaring themselves to be heterosexual, or at least heterosexual behavior, and they're still cheating on their wives.
See, most of the women that I knew who were having affairs with other women were single themselves. They weren't cheating on anyone.
Oh, so that makes it...
Yeah, so then,
a shade better.
That's better because you're not cheating on someone. And it was just more secretive because a lot of these people weren't the ones who were on stage, even though they were actual leaders. But again, some were on stage.
Right.
And carrying on this way. So I left Exodus in 2011. So my daughter was diagnosed with cancer in 2009, and I took a leave of absence once she was, because as I told you before, I really couldn't function very well, and the energy I did have, I needed to give to her. Mm-hmm. So I took a leave of absence, and then I think it was in 2011, I did a few things for Exodus, and I billed those hours, and Randy Thomas called me and said, we can't afford to pay you anymore. And I saw that as I'm being fired. So I said, okay, let me just clear out a few emails and then and then you can close my account. So Alan Chambers called me the next day and said, that's not what I meant at all. I just meant to extend your leave of absence. And I said, no, I'm happy with the way things are. I really need to concentrate on other things now. When in reality, I did really want out.
Because you were already going through those transitions.
The reason I billed those hours, because I did have some loose ends to tie up with Exodus that I needed to take care of, sending emails to people. And I did that, and then...
So the interesting thing was, this is where our worlds semi-converged for the first time, because when Alan Chambers came to the Gay Christian Network Conference and sat on that stage, which I actually thought was a very brave thing to do, and I thought the audience was pretty gracious. We were down in Orlando for a conference 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. And he sat, and after
Because think about it, sorry for interrupting, but he was seeing the same things that I was.
Right,
and more
right.
so. He had been seeing it for a lot longer, because when I was working at Family Research Council, I saw bits of things here and there, but I was not working with ex-gays. I was working with pro-family leaders.
Right.
I was not in that world. I had a toe in that world, and that was about it. I had a few glimpses here and there into that world. But you're talking people like Alan, they've been seeing what's going on behind the scenes, these affairs, these falls, these same-sex attractions that can't be overcome over and over and over again. So you can see how someone who is trying to do the right thing would say, something's wrong here.
It's not working.
This is not
And that's what he said from the stage. He actually said that 99.9% of the people don't change orientation, and the ones that may be part of that 0.1% could possibly be women, but we also know that women are more fluid. So when he said that, it caused a lot of upheaval in the gay Christian world, where a lot of people had gone through ex-gay therapy. You know, that he was even there, that he was even invited into a safe space at the conference. And I think that started some of the major crumbling to Exodus.
That was sort of the nail in the coffin.
Right. So how did you see it from your side?
From my side, I wasn't really there for any of that. What year did that happen?
I think it was 2011. Now,
Yeah, so
we
this
may
is-
have both have it off.
Right.
But
So this either was... I was gone by the time this happened. But I have many contacts, had many contacts in Orange County among the people who are large donors to most of the, if not all, of the pro-family organizations. And none of those really gave to Exodus, because Exodus was seen in the political realm as too soft. They were too nice to gay people.
Isn't that interesting?
They were not hardline enough. They would not get up and stand against employment non-discrimination laws. They wouldn't stand up and speak against hate crimes laws. They wouldn't get up. They weren't political enough. They were too easy, and this is what people thought in the pro-family movement. They're a necessary evil, because we need to show that people can change, that gay people can change to straight, and that's their use. But other than that, they're sort of a bit of an embarrassment.
So when Alan came to the conference and pretty much verbally, I'm telling you though, he did not just get up on the stage and say this. He had several people that were part of that ex-gay world pushing and asking him great questions.
Well, this, to go back to what was happening behind the scenes, is that Exodus was losing money. Obviously, I had been on hiatus, and then they said, we don't have the money to pay you. They had asked me for the contact information for contacts, my friends in Orange County who were large donors.
Because that's what you did. You
Yeah, and they had hired a director of development for a lot of money, who also contacted me and said, can we have your contacts in Orange County? So Exodus was
when this is over,
already
I'm going to ask for your contacts in Orange County.
If I had any, you'd have them. So if I had any anymore.
that agreed with us.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
So the Orange County people, the people who could have given money, you're going to go and talk at the Gay Christian Network. You're not going to get any money out of them.
No,
And
no,
they
no.
already saw, they already saw Exodus as too soft anyway. So chances of Alan getting money even before he spoke at GCN were slim to none.
So what's interesting is out of the ashes of GCN going down, we had the Restored Hope Network rising and thinking that it was just because Alan was too soft also and not handling it well that they needed to take the reins. So
What's interesting is that all those leaders of Restored Hope Network are former Exodus people. So they've seen the same thing that the rest of us have. They've seen all of these falls, all of these same-sex relationships by leaders, and they've seen it all too.
but I guess they're holding a position of those have all just not held the truth
They're
high enough.
not holy enough.
They're not holy enough, right?
Because it's not about, it's about holiness. It's about,
We're not pursuing
are you seeking God? Right.
We're seeking
It's
holiness, not heterosexuality.
Exactly.
Right.
It's what would I say? I always said it's like heterosexuality is not the goal; it's the byproduct. It's the byproduct, not the goal. The goal is seeking after God. The goal is holiness. The goal is being pleasing to God.
Right. And those lines still play, and they still say them. And I think it's in our webinar number 5, we're going to talk about some of the policies that have come out of Restored Hope Network, which it's like they're having this, it's like Exodus on steroids almost. They're bringing back some policies, or they're bringing in some policies that even Exodus didn't have and didn't work. So that's rather interesting. But one topic I do want to hit before we end this is some of these ex-gay ministries and some of this American traditional family, pro-family, which, again, I really resist some of this terminology of pro-family groups. That, Family Research Council will call themselves a pro-family group, as if they have the corner on, first of all, what a family looks like, and that they're the ones out protecting families. There's lots of different varieties of families, and I believe, marriage.
We'll talk about that in the future.
Right. Marriage equality is about protecting those different kinds of families as well. But it's not working in the United States. This whole condemnation isn't working. The gay Christian movement is rising. There are leaders within the gay Christian movement that are asking us to look at a different view that people may not be comfortable with the Bible. That's what I ask people from, all kinds of aspects. Can we talk about these verses in context? So it's forced some of these pro-family, again, bad name, some of these anti-gay groups that don't support anything outside father, mother, children, marriages, and relationships to go abroad.
Yeah, because look what's happening here
Right.
now. It's like the snowball effect. Everything is falling into place. There's plenty of other things that need to be done, but they can see public opinion has completely changed. People are much more accepting of gay rights. They want to see people treated equally. It's all about equality.
Right.
So if it's failing here, then what?
So the next thing you do is you look at the next minority group, which they're doing. They're targeting trans people. FRC recently came out with a issue paper, a statement paper on trans people, which I think one week we ought to cover that paper, just that paper, because we're going to see it again. But we see that these, oh gosh, it just drives me crazy to say pro-family, but that's what they call themselves, traditional family groups going into other countries. So I had an interesting experience, and I think it might have been 2011 also. I got a letter in the mail, in the email, from a person in Belarus who sent me a download, sent me a PDF, a rather slick PDF, like the kind that Family Research would produce. And it was this points of why gay marriage and gay relationships were completely destructive to families. but it wasn't by FRC, but it was just as slick as some of their really, I mean, when they want to, they can produce
Very nice.
good-looking propaganda with well footnoted, really terrible resources in the footnotes, because we all know I look at the footnotes. So the resources they're citing are awful, but it was equivalent to that. It was that level. It wasn't just a piece of trash. So this person sent me this, I think it was a 47-page document from Belarus, and said to me, you know, have you ever seen this? Because this is what is being passed around in the Eastern Bloc countries, the Serbian countries, Croatia and Moldova and the Ukraine and all these different Eastern European countries. And it's being translated into the native languages so that this propaganda is now coming to our country. Have you ever heard of this group? So the name of the group was United Families International. Well, I think I know. I pretty much keep my pulse on what's going on around here.
Right.
And I'd never heard of this group. So I went online, and the first thing I was greeted with, so it's United Families, I think it's .com, could be .org, but United Families International. And I went to their website, and lovely families reaching out, playing, tossing the children in the air, just like the beautiful website you'd want to see, and just like marriage and raising your children. And this document was buried in there. I had to look for this document. And when I found it, I was stunned that this seemingly pro-family, not anti-gay, there was nothing that you could see from the outside. So I started to wonder, who the heck are these people? So I wrote to them. Oh, surprise, right? And I got into an exchange with someone in the office, a higher-up woman. And within, probably 4 or 5 exchanges, it wasn't going well. So I do what I always do. I try to preserve relationship. I don't push to the end where I'm right. I will walk away from everything that starts to go sideways in terms of, I really do care about reflecting my Christian attitudes and preserving my Christian testimony and spirit. I have always cared about it. Mm-hmm. So rather than be mean to somebody, I'll just walk away. So that it nets me the wonderful benefit of being called stupid a lot. You're just stupid. You can't answer this question. Actually, no. I mean, I could, but what's the point?
I'm not going to grind you into the ground.
I'm not. And you know, I've said to people, I can go toe to toe. And I'm telling you, if you're listening to this and you think you've got me over a barrel, please invite me on a stage, have a public forum with me, and let's talk. I will be gracious and kind, and better yet, have Yvette and I come, and we will be lovely and gracious and kind, and we will probably win. And if it starts getting mean, we'll walk out. So I said to this woman, they were based in Phoenix, and I said, I come down to Phoenix at least once a year to visit my mother. So why don't we stop this right here, because it's going sideways? And why don't we sit across the table from one another and respect that one another, we have different opinions. So I let it go. And then 7 or 8 months later, I was headed down to Phoenix. So I never forget, right? I mean, I don't know what kind of car even you drive, but there's some things I never forget. And so I sent her a letter and asked if we could meet. And 2 women from this organization decided to meet me in this mall. We were going to meet before the mall opened, and then we were going to go have breakfast. Well, we never moved from this table where we met for 3.5 hours. And I found out that they were incredibly involved, and had been at that point for 13 years, in the United Nations. I had never heard of them before. But they were working in a venue that was the gay activist organizations. They were blind to what was going on. They operate as an NGO inside of the United Nations, and they were pushing their policies in third world nations, Eastern Bloc countries, producing this propaganda, and very excited. They even positioned someone right in New York City to constantly go to the UN to do this. Now, this is something that we don't pay attention to because we
At
don't
all.
even, right? I'd never heard of them before. Never heard of them. Well, if they're listening, I'll do my mea culpas right now, but I went right to Southern poverty law. And I said, I'd never heard of these people. And the next year they ended up on a watch list and on the hates list because nobody was watching them. But we're doing this. They're actually a Mormon-based group. Most of their leaders are Mormon. But this is what we're doing. American evangelicals, since about 2009, have been going to Africa and to Russia. Russia in 1992 passed part of their parliamentary acts, whatever they would call their amendments and laws, that they were going to be accepting of the gay community. Now, people find that absolutely astounding, but the man that I used for my chapter 2 of my book, Kenneth Lewis, they used his book to prove that gay people were just a natural segment of human sexuality. But somehow since then, they became rabidly anti-gay. And that's because American evangelicals and American
Mormons,
but also people like Scott Lively, who has done a great deal of damage, and Paul Cameron, they've done a great deal of damage. But they're received as American voices of expertise in other countries. So we think it's going away, but we've exported the worst of our attitudes towards gay and transgender people to other countries. And we're responsible. So it was quite amusing to watch Obama several weeks ago when he went to Kenya to speak to the president of Kenya, President Kenyatta, actually, and say, you've got to do better with your women and your girls, and you've got to do better with your LGBT people. And I watched the reaction of the Christian right to that, and they were calling Obama a bully because President Kenyatta said, we don't have an issue with LGBT people. We don't have any kind of issues here. And so now we have the religious right supporting a Kenyan president because he's standing up to our president who's asking for more human dignity for LGBT people and women. So we're really guilty.
and that's when you wonder, where is your faith? Where does your faith lie?
Gosh, right?
That's what makes people like me say, I thought you were motivated by Christian values, by biblical truths. That type of thing makes me question.
So I had a conversation with somebody. We really will end someday. This is what happens, right? This is why we get to go on very long hikes. So I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said, when you hear objections, maybe you should think of it this way. This is how I start to separate things. Is the objection I'm hearing at least somewhat supported, validated by what I see in Scripture? So, okay, an objection is gay people can't be parents. Like, they don't parent as well as a heterosexual couple. Okay, show me that in the Bible. Okay, so obviously that's not a biblical truth. It's an ideology. Where did you get the ideology? Well, from here. No, you didn't get it from anywhere, because here's the research. Okay, let's try another one. Gay people can't procreate. Well, yay, okay. So where is procreation the conditions of righteousness, creating a family in the New Testament? Old Testament procreation was very important. New Testament, God says, I expand my family by those who believe in me by faith. And, that can be a whole nother show about procreation and complementarity. One of my favorite topics, complementarity. So show me exactly where that is in the Bible, that you must procreate to be a married couple. Okay, it's not there. It's ideology. So tell me where that ideology comes from. So I'm starting to challenge people, is what you believe in the Bible, or is it an ideology you have come to believe through something in culture? And is that provable? Is it a truth? So it's just another way to look at it. And these are, Yvette, these are just the questions that I wish somebody had asked me. Like you say that's in the Bible,
these
right?
questions. No one.
You say that's in the Bible. Show me where that's in the Bible. And if you say you hold this word paramount to all truths, then surely this truth must be here for you to hold it in such esteem. Or is it just a belief? Is it just an ideology?
Right.
So that's all of what we do is about, is challenging in the most respectful, intelligent, informed way we can, because I don't know any other way to do it and keep it civil.
Right.
And so that's what we're about. So you've had an interesting past, but I'm going to say this, you're going to have a more interesting future, right?
No doubt.
Right. So as we travel around the country and give presentations, I think the pairing of the two of us, of temperament and background and information, is just a really a powerful pairing that's bringing to this conversation, different voices and questions that are not out there. So we very much appreciate people following us. We are on iTunes, and we'll be doing this. And
as you know, we're called Sisters of Thunder.
Yes. We love the name.
Such a great name.
It's such a great name. We sound moderate. I mean, we are moderate, but I think we're here to stir things up and to show a different perspective of looking at things, and just always respectful. So thank you for listening to our podcast number 4. I can probably create a list of 25 more topics, so this will not be a challenge to us at all. And in all of them, I think would be something that you could send to somebody on whichever side of this conversation, because we just choose to provoke considerate thought. Yeah, thinking.
Yes.
What a concept, right?
Yep.
So thank you for being so transparent about your past, and I'm gonna have to publicly totally forgive you for everything you've done. So I forgive you. I love you. It's all behind us because we've got nothing but this bright and brilliant future of helping to bring peaceful, productive conversation to this very difficult arena. So I'm Kathy.
I'm Yvette. Thank you for listening, and listen to us again next week.
Thank you.